We'll turn our attention to clinical research with our next session, Breaking Health Barriers, Information that Empowers. This conversation is supported by SysScript, the Center for Information and Study on Clinical Research Participation. Now, moderating today's discussion is Daphne Percival, a community educator with over 20 years in research and development. She currently leads outreach for SysScript's Journey to Better Health initiative, helping people better understand their options in clinical research. We also have Dr. Joanne Nicholls. I had the honor of meeting this wonderful sister. She's so nice. She's the Director of Oncology and Clinical Trials at Novant Health, whose work bridges neuroscience, cancer care, it's very important and near and dear to my life, and health equity. Also, Nicol Brandon, Lead Clinical Research Manager at GE Healthcare, with nearly 2 decades of experience in maternal infant care and trial strategy. And lastly, we have Nubia Whitaker, Clinical Trial Health Equity Leader at Moderna, focused on making trials more accessible and inclusive for underserved communities. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our panel.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. There we go. I love that. My name is Hope Venterselli. I am the Senior Manager of Events and Community Programs with SysScript. We are so proud to be a part of the Black Health Matters Summit and to be sponsoring today's session, Taking Control of Our Health, Information that Empowers. SysScript is the Center for Information on Clinical Study Participation. I know many of you stopped by our booth today, but our goal is to bring more awareness and education to clinical trials, what that is and how it can benefit your healthcare journey. So before we dive into our panel, I did want to play a short video that explains a little bit more about the importance of clinical trial participation.
Are you open?
Yes, we are. Welcome to the MT Pharmacy. There's nothing on the shelves because we wanted to show what modern medicine would be like without clinical trials.
Hi, my name's Lester, and since I can remember, my mother she has diabetes, and she's been fighting it for years.
Clinical trials are medical research studies involving patients. They can help discover new medicines or get improved versions of existing medicines.
My brother was diagnosed with appendix cancer at the age of 46. The type of tumor that he has is called a signet ring cell carcinoma. I think there's only like a very small percentage of people in the United States that have survived from it. That type of cancer, I would really love for there to be a cure for.
Clinical trials help us find out if a treatment can work in patients. We'd like to fill these shelves a bit like how clinical trials fill the shelves in a regular pharmacy.
For Teddy.
I use 7 boxes because I put down pills for different reasons. I use HIV and AIDS because that's been out here for a long time.
I picked cancer for my box because my mother was a victim of cancer. She died in the year 2008. I was the age of 9 years old.
I never really thought about clinical trials. I guess I just thought it was for people who had cancer or something serious like that.
I think this is a good concept. I think it gets people talking.
I've actually never thought about the fact that without clinical trials, we wouldn't have any of the medicines that we take every single day.
And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator, Daphne, and the rest of our speakers for our discussion. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Hope. So we want to start, as the video has indicated, about the importance of clinical trials. So anyone want to take that question?
Sure, I can take it. So as we saw, the pharmacy would have been empty were it not for clinical trials. So clinical trials are the way that new or improved medications and treatments are developed. So without clinical trials, we would not have treatments for the things that ail us.
So I'll add that I was just telling her, I got goosebumps when I watched that video, only because either we know someone who's dealing with something or we ourselves are dealing with something. And the more awareness that we have as a community, the more education we have, we can be more informed when we or in the situations that we are where we're facing something. So
That was very well said, and I want to say that you guys look amazing. It's so encouraging to see so many black and brown faces. Clinical trials is important to us because it comes all the way home. Without clinical trials, you will have patients getting a diagnosis and there may be no treatment options. So that's a fancy word that we use in medicine. It basically means there is no drug available for you for your diagnosis in the absence of a clinical trial. And I'd like to take it a little bit further and say it's not only important for there to be a drug available, but it's important for there to be a drug available that works for you, right? It should be specific to you. It should be unique or targeted for you. And that's why clinical trial participation is important.
So true. And then there are sometimes when people have a lack of trust with clinical trials. So with trust being the key in clinical trials to encourage participation, what is being done to build more trust in the community?
Sure. Starting back down here with me? Okay, perfect. I think it's really important to say that skepticism is healthy, but so is curiosity. So I think we may or may not be aware that in the past there have been some bad actors who have researched our people and have not done so in an ethical way. Because of that history, what we now have as an industry is a lot of protections in place to ensure that if you are participating in a clinical trial, that is a decision you are making with all of the information in hand, that you have the ability to stop participating in that trial at any point for any reason, including no reason at all. And that when you are receiving whatever kind of treatment or intervention that is being studied, you are getting all of the information about what is being put into your body. So I think that skepticism, again, is healthy, but we also need to maintain that curiosity, because if we do not participate in developing these new treatments, we won't know that they work for us, for our bodies.
I'll say trust is hard, right? Especially when you know the history, you kind of know just our climate. Trust is hard, but I think if you have a good support system and you are willing to say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make me a better version of me, you're going to do whatever it takes, right? And I'll say this little anecdote and then I'll pass it on. I've been doing research a very long time. My wonderful parents, love them. They both passed on, but they both had opportunities to be in clinical research studies that could have prolonged their life a bit. And despite me providing them this information, going through that informed consent with them, and really looking at what was going to be involved, neither one of them ever participated in a clinical research study. That is very sad to me, that despite me knowing what I know, the misinformation that they clung on to and did not release, the outcome could have been a little bit different, but it wasn't. So I think we have to be informed again. I know I said that before, but if you stay in the same situation and you keep doing the same thing, you keep saying no, how do you expect the ending to be any different? You can't. It's not going to be different until we change our mindset and our having a conversation, knowing what your family history is, understanding what's going on with your bodies, and going in informed, having a conversation with your physician or PA or nurse practitioner. It's all about, I think it's not a cut and dry answer. It's fluid and it evolves, but we have to somewhat change our mindset around it.
That's very good. The opposite of trust is usually fair, right? It's founded in fair. And when we examine why are people fearful of clinical trials, it's the unknown. What does this mean? I'd like to share that in terms of what's being done, there is comfort in knowing that there is now representation in clinical trials. You're looking at individuals here who have studied, who've become doctors, who've learned how to do clinical research so that they can have granddaughter and grandchild conversations with you. They can have auntie and niece conversations with you. You have representation in this space, and we are willing to stop our daily lives and have conversations with you at dining room tables, at church functions, to explain what is really happening. What typically happens is a patient will go into a doctor's office, they will go through all of their procedures, clinical trials may be mentioned along with some other options, and the patient is none the wiser about what was spoken and what was discussed in that space. And they leave going, well, he or she said something, but I don't know what they said. You have advocates in your community that are willing to stop and explain what is happening so that you can make an informed decision that is not driven in fear. You have individuals who are willing to do that. And more, you've got more people coming into the field, and connect with your younger, individuals in your family. Find out who's studying biochemistry. Find out who's going pre-med. Find out who in your church is doing these things. They're just not young people doing great things that you can say, oh, that's great, you're gonna be a doctor. They are a resource to you to explain what this process is all about. We have to build the trust inside of our own communities.
Okay, and then what do you think some of the, I know there were like misconceptions about clinical trials in the past, but what are some of the safeguards that are in place now to protect the trial participants?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I touched upon briefly, the most important thing to me is informed consent. So that means that before you sign on a line to say, yes, I am going to participate in a clinical trial, you are ensuring that you understand everything that is going to happen to you in that trial, what has happened in previous trials when it's been studied in other folks. And you are able to ask as many questions as you want, as many times as you want, until you decide whether or not participating in that trial is the right thing for you. That is the baseline of the protections that we have in place, and it is so incredibly crucial. And I think what I tell my family is that it's a two-way street. So yes, it would be wonderful if our doctors came to us and provided all of the information about the newfangled things that are available to us. But we also need to do our part and ask the question as well. Mm-hmm. What are some new and innovative things that could be options for us that you haven't recommended to me yet? So that informed consent process is the baseline.
There are a lot of safeguards. I would say just know by the time you hear about a research study or approached about it, there have been phases that have been completed prior to it even getting to you for you to know about it and see it. I think informed consent is imperative. As a sponsor, on the sponsor side, I will say we have so many conversations and discussions about the pros have to outweigh the cons. Right? This has to be beneficial for our patients and for our devices that we are working to develop and implement. So it's a two-way street. We don't want to do anything that's going to hinder you in any way or be unhealthy for you. So knowing that when you're looking at that informed consent, just know that informed consent was not written without a great deal and number of hours that went into it to make sure that language is accessible and at your level where you can hear about it. I know clinicians go in and they talk to you about a clinical research study, but when the clinical research coordinators, they come in after that, we put it in the layman's terms. We say, hey, let's not look at this informed consent right now. Let me tell you about the study. The goal is when we do go through in that informed consent, what I've said to you is going to resonate because you're going to say, oh, I remember Nicole said that, but now you see it, in writing. And that way, you can also tell your family about it because guess what? They are just as involved in a clinical research study as you are. So they're either going to have to bring you to a few more appointments. They are involved. That's your village. They are going to have to help you. So everyone has to be informed, on board, and understand that if at any time you want to stop, you can say no, and it immediately stops. And you do not have to tell us why. You don't. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, that's it. No.
Just as my colleague said, there are two sides to this. So I want to take a minute just to explain the safeguards that get put in place at the patient level in my role as Director of Oncology Clinical Trials. So my colleagues, the sponsors are the individuals who are manufacturing the drug, right? And they're creating the drug. So they come to us at the hospital side and they say, we have something that we think is going to be beneficial to patients. Can you help us study it? So they send us a large packet. It's almost 200, 250 pages. And in that packet, it has all of the things that they have done that the FDA has reviewed to ensure that this agent or this medicine can now be consumed by a human. So they do a lot of years of groundwork before they get the thumbs up for that. We then take, at our institution, 3 months of safety checks before we deliver that drug to you. Before it becomes an option for you to consent about, we check to say, does this seem to be sound, safe, and something that we can stand behind before we deliver it to you as a patient. We also train our coordinators to meet you in clinic and sit down with you and talk about all of the steps involved in participating in this trial. And then we send you home with all of those steps in paper and say, sleep on it. Talk to a family member. Pray about it. And then come back, write down your questions, and talk to your physician about it. And if you feel like something doesn't feel right, you'll talk about all the other options. If you feel like you want to move forward, we'll tell you what that's going to look like, how many days. Every single visit you come into a clinical trial, every single time you come in for treatment, you do something called a lab draw. Anybody ever had blood taken? They are taking your blood to make sure that your body is in a stable state to digest this medication. If any of your labs are off, time out. That is the first safety check. And they'll tell you, can't treat you today. We need to get this up. We need to get that level normalized. Your blood pressure is a little high. So if those steps are not being taken, you get to say, can I see my labs before I get treated today? Can I have a consult with my doctor, my nurse practitioner, my PA? And that's what they're speaking about when they say you can stop at any time. Because we're constantly looking at your measures to see if it's easy to treat. I will honestly say that I believe in being treated at hospitals that are doing research-based care because it keeps the doctors accountable. Yeah, let's pause for that. They're not demigods. They have to be held accountable for what they do. And so you want to be at an institution where there are pauses along the way so that you maintain the control of your care.
Okay. So I think we have time for one last question, and then we'll turn it to the audience for a Q&A session. So how do studies encourage diverse participation, and why is diversity important in clinical trials?
Yeah, I might stick on that accountability piece for a moment. I have experienced in my life some bias when I am interacting with the healthcare system, where I have sometimes felt that some assumptions are being made about me and how I might approach my own healthcare. So one way that we can keep our physicians accountable is by educating ourselves and asking those tough questions that they are not proactively bringing to us. So one of the ways that diversity is important in clinical research is because diseases don't discriminate. We all get ill with different things, but different diseases can work differently and impact different people in different ways. The way that the drugs that are available on the market today interact with our bodies may be different than how they interact with somebody else. So one of the questions I always ask my physician if they are prescribing me something new, I ask them, in the clinical trials that were run to develop this drug, how many Black people were in that trial? What were the side effects that they experienced? Because that gives me some information about how that might work for me. And if the answer is, oh, well, there were about 5% African American participants in that trial, so we think that this is how it works in folks. Well, I'm not so sure how it works in me. So that's really the reason that I tell my family and that I remind myself whenever I am interacting with the healthcare space. I want to ensure that I am empowering myself and my family to make decisions that are specific to us. It's our health and it's in our hands.
I would say, if you're not in the race, how are you going to win the marathon? Okay? If you are not a participant in clinical studies, how will we know how it affects our body? We won't. Because, okay, I'm sure some people have high blood pressure in here. How many blood pressure pills or medications did you have to try before you found the right one that worked for you? I'm not saying that's because we didn't participate in the clinical study, but I just want to bring this point home. If we're not at the table, we can't be a part of the conversation. So that's why we have to work on our mindset when we're thinking about it. You're not a guinea pig, because that's what I hear all the time. I don't want to be a guinea pig. You're not a guinea pig. That's why we're having this conversation. So I think it's just continued conversation, because we can't say we don't trust and then we're in a situation where we need a certain medication and it doesn't work for us. And it could stem back for lack of diversity in our clinical studies. It's not just us, it's other minorities. I mean, it's in general. We did a run of about 10 years of our studies to look at the demographics. Do you know who the lowest percentage was in our clinical studies? Us. For a number of reasons, right? We have a lot on our shoulders, a number of reasons. But that is not okay, because when we need the treatment, we need the right and the best treatment to make us be the best version of ourselves.
I'll be quick. We've got about 5 minutes, and I'll just close by saying you have to be comfortable with fighting for your representation. You do have a seat at the table. There is a mandate right now at the government level that says pharmaceutical drugs cannot be approved unless they have a diversity recruitment plan. They have to prove to the FDA that they included us to get their what we call their IND, their commercial drug availability. All they're saying at this point is, well, we sought them out, but they didn't respond. They have a mandate to recruit you. So fight for your representation. We are going to fight on the front end, and it'll be a partnership.
Thank you. So, do we have any questions in the audience?
My understanding with clinical trials is that 50% of the people are going to get the pill that's being tested, and 50% are going to get sugar pills. And I'm always afraid that if I got a sugar pill and I had a medical problem, I might be worse participating in a clinical trial.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's something called research design, right? And so what you just described is one of many research designs. And particularly in cancer, we don't do that anymore. based on certain criteria. Not that they don't have placebos, but let me explain quickly. You have to make sure you do no harm. So that means if there is an agent available that is maintaining or decreasing disease, anything they study has to prove before it gets to a patient that it's been doing better than that. So that knocks that out from there. There is still placebo, but those tests I talk about, if they see any increase or change method, put you on a different trial.
Good afternoon. In 2002, I was diagnosed with transverse myelitis. It's an autoimmune disease. Very rare at that time. I think they said I was the number 1,000 in the world who was diagnosed with it. The treatment I received actually came from the American Red Cross. In terms of trials, Johns Hopkins Hospital, CDC, and the U.S. Department of Defense, all three approached me to participate in clinical trials because the disease was so rare. My family refused it because of how the opportunity was presented. It was not communicated as it is now. So what I would like to say to the panelists is it's a paradigm shift. Your work is truly cut out for you because of the how we were approached affected our decision. So, you have to roll up your sleeves and get tough with it. And if you believe in what you're doing, the research, understand that historically, trust is an issue. And so you've got to find a way to break through that barrier in order to get more participation from your community.
Received. Thank you.
Okay, one more question, please. Thank you.
I had a quick question about research trials. First, I want to say my name is Jacqueline Foster, and I'm honored to be here. I'm also honored that November is Epilepsy Awareness Month. And my question is about epilepsy trials, clinical trials. And in North Carolina, why is it that they don't have as much epilepsy awareness issues as they do nationwide? Or why is there not as many epilepsy awareness, basically epilepsy awareness as there is in North Carolina as there is nationwide?
Well, I'll say this because I did work at the Neurosciences Institute at Atrium, and I think with any disease and awareness, we can always do better, right? We do epilepsy, or I say we do as I was still there. Sorry. We did do epilepsy awareness events, and we had outreach, but I think it's a community. We have to ask for that. We have to stand up and do that. My dad had Huntington's chorea. I don't think I've ever been to a Huntington's chorea march here in Charlotte. That's because it's not, the awareness is not there. So I think it's just a continued conversation and collaboration within the community and church and in events like this that are those conversation starters. You never know who you're going to meet or who you're going to connect with to help build that up. So I agree with you, but I think it's just fluid. So.
And one last comment is, if anybody wants to find out anything about clinical trials, visit clinicaltrials.gov, and you can put in a search with the different things that you're looking for, and it'll give you a list of trials in the area.
Thank you again to our speakers. Please feel free to stop by the SysScript table on your way out for more information about trials, how to find them, and how to determine if it's the right choice for you. But another round of applause for our speakers. We thank you so much for joining us today.